Here we go. Not a lot of preparation time, so we'll see how it goes. But at least I do have this a lost art in this culture they call Christianity in America. It's a tough gig, it's a tough day, and people keep on wondering why it is that I don't like the term Christian. Well, today you're going to get another look at it. And gosh, I've started to extend this out. I've got some people out of state that are really exciting me. A guy named Aaron in Minnesota that's really taken off, South Carolina, San Diego. The people that are out of state using these, I'm thankful for you. You've been a breath of fresh air in a time that my own people that have been around me a long time folding up like lawn chairs, you know what I mean? And it's tough. And if they haven't noticed my frustration or they still tune in, they'll understand why. But in my classes, I've been a little more fiery recently, which I'm sure is confusing, and it shouldn't be. But a lot of it is because the shepherds are sleeping and the hired hands are running for the hills. But they're also like the ones with the big churches and the actual churches, right? The ones that are buildings, that are businesses, that have businessmen running them, that people are much more comfortable in. And that's what problem that I have with Christianity. But this right here that I'm going to tell you today is really one of the major differences between a Christian and a disciple. Major differences between a Christian and a disciple. Okay, and in our culture, you'll be able to see it all the time. And a lot of this is because we don't count the cost before. And you're going to see that. It's like along the way. But Jesus doesn't seem to leave room for that. So let's go through this so that I can show you what I mean. Matthew 10:37 through 39. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. This is a deep, beautiful, amazing, torturous thing that Jesus says here. It just is. Follow him for a time. If you think he's a prophet and a teacher, even follow him for a time. We know who he is. God, the way, the truth, the life. The only way to the Father is through him. Like the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. But even if you want to say you think he's a prophet or a teacher, you follow him for a time. You'll walk into something that proves to you that he's God. Because this in itself, a few short verses that ruffle the feathers of some people, rub salt in the wound of some, and to free others into an existence they never would have found had they not actually followed Jesus. And this is my frustration with my people that have been with me a long time, is this right here. This is still they're having trouble with. And that's because they were Christians. Not disciples, Christians, being made disciples now, right? And so, yeah, count the cost along the way, but we're going to see that in a minute. This is the starting point. Like, this is before you could follow him. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it. Now, it's about to be beautiful there at the end, how it wraps it up, but all that right there, if somebody's reading that and they're a Christian in our time, they don't want any part of being a disciple of Jesus. But he's just saying you're not even worthy of me here, right? In the next one that I'm going to show you, it's about being his disciple. But right here, it's you're just not worthy of him. Now, think this through. If he's saying you're not worthy of me, does that sound like he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you? Because again, I'm not the judge, but I'm called to judge things. And if he's saying you're not worthy of me, then is he going to say, depart from me, I never knew you at the end? I think Christians ought to be shaking in their boots when they read this. I think they ought to get the fear of the Lord's the beginning of wisdom, because they definitely don't have any wisdom in Christian churches in America. No wisdom. Any denominations, anything. The wisdom's been drained out of the place because it's narrow as the path and few find it. But this is one of the reasons why, is that in America, you got to figure out how to live the American dream first and then whittle God in, work God in. What in the world? How could that even be? So you're getting distracted by the creation from the creator. That is baffling. All right. That's this. Space cadets. That's got to be what Christians are, trying to look through like a visor to read a book, right? That isn't a book. It's the active living word of God. But this is so difficult. You think about it. Like, I have people that are having a hard time with this right now, and I've been teaching them for 4 years. And so the frustration, like some of it you get to understand when you actually follow Jesus and see that, man, no wonder he lost more disciples than he gained all the time. You know what I mean? No wonder why. This right here will make him lose more disciples than he gained all the time, because it's this counting the cost that people can't do unless they know God and love God at all. Because if you know God and love God at all, isn't it really hard not to love him more than mother, father, husband, wife, kids, dog, money, things, stuff? If you love him a little bit, like we're talking about unconditional, powerful love from the creator of the universe to you, or people who have all the conditions in the world, especially your family most of the time. That's why he didn't come to bring peace, but a sword to divide families, to then get you into the Jesus blood family. But even when you have a Jesus blood family, people get tricked back to this all the time. It's crazy, but he told us it would happen. But you have to listen up. This is crucial. Okay? This is crucial. If you're a Christian, this ought to scare you. If you're a disciple, this is what we live our lives by, because of the last part. Okay? Because if you actually have followed Jesus, if you actually know him and love him, and you're going to see the flow of what these are, like this last part is what we know. And that's why the first part doesn't hurt us. It hurts you. The Christian's like, oh my gosh, I really love my kids. And it's like, well, oh, sure. And he wants you to love your kids. But more than him, he said, you're not worthy of him. Because how could you love your kids more than Jesus? He died for you so that you could have kids, have a life that isn't just going to be your kids are going to be like ash for eternity, is what the atheists think and agnostics think. We know there's another destination. Okay? But you want to live like a comfortable life now and then maybe go to hell, or your kids go to hell. Right? That's the Christian. At least you believe in heaven and hell, right? And so what you're going to do is escort your kids to hell and teach them how to love everybody more than God too. That's tough. That's hard to hear. That's a hard teaching, but I didn't say it. Jesus did. Okay? I didn't say it. He did. I just trusted him enough to follow him. I've got young kids. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to go do God's work no matter what. And my kids are going to grow up and see that and know that. But I do not love my kids more than I love God, more than I love Jesus. More than I love Father, Son, Holy Spirit? No. And they know that. And they're going to be raised to do the same thing. My wife, same thing. Okay? And that's because the design is the design. And if I'm going to follow him, I'm going to follow him. And I look at this last part, and this is the part, right? But listen to what he does. He shows you the cost, the cost, the cost, the cost, the cost. And then most people don't even hear the reward at the end, because it's not a reward to them. They still love their dog more than God, probably, much less the kids and everything else. Okay? But the end of this is what people who follow Jesus, it's like a rally cry, okay? Anyone who loves their father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. That is the answer that the narrow path people have, and especially the leaders on the narrow path, which is even a more narrow path, because we're held to a higher standard. We had to count the cost on an extra level and everything else. And I tell you, found life. Okay, that's the part, is that this was all difficult, but he wasn't kidding when he said, you'll find it. That part, I got chills to my inner being. Like, please, if you can hear, and it's going to say at the end of this last one, do you have the ears to hear? Which means most people don't, or it wouldn't even say that. You will find that life, not in the next one. I think that people think that just means you'll find it after you die. No. Now, the pearl of great value in your hands now, the life lived as a kingdom resident through the Beatitudes now, like everything changes. The old is gone, the new is here, adoption to sonship, all those concepts come to life, because I did find my life once I lost it. Once I lost looking for it in my kids, and looking for it in my wife, and looking for it in stuff and things, and looking for it on Success Mountain, and you name it. But you see these people over there anyways, they don't love their life. They have the things that a lot of people want to have, and they don't love their life. They hate it anyways. And so what if you just hated that life and found God and loved life? Boom, now you could live your whole life from there. And that's the reward of it. But you had to count the cost before, and he knows your heart. You can't just say you love God more than everyone and everything. You have to actually love God more than anyone or anything. And let me just tell you for a second why I'm frustrated, but just it is difficult. Okay? Yes. But it is worth it. Yes. And that's the thing that I don't think Christians will ever understand, because they're stuck in denominations and minutia, and they like songs, and they like a program that literally they stole from stage acting, and they give you a little program and you only got time for this and this and this. I mean, it's a joke. It is comic view to kingdom people. That's a joke. Court jesters probably don't make it into the kingdom. We don't need them there, but they're lining up to sell you things right there from the stage. Okay, that what they call the pulpit, but you know it isn't, because we got drag queens up there now, and that just can't happen if it's real. So the truth is, if you love your life, you'll lose it. If you lose it for him, you'll gain it for eternity. And eternity starts the second you don't care about this worldly life anymore, because you're focused on the kingdom that's underneath all this right now. That's a lot to take in. I need you to understand that it's been 10 minutes, and you probably need to press rewind and need to run back through that. I'll just be honest, the sharp people that I'm finally getting introduced to, who understand what's going on here. And when I say that, I'm not trying to be condescending, okay? It may sound like it, and maybe it is in some way. But what I mean is, the same thing that is being said in here, the sharp people weren't what you think sharp people would be. And yet, it's like it takes discipline and drive to do it. So the Pharisees would have said that they were the sharpest, they got the coolest headdress and all those things, but Jesus is like, woe to you all the time to them. And the sharp people were the ones that came off the fishing boat and decided to follow him. The sharp people were the ones who heard the strong message and said, no, I want to follow anyways, and would listen and listen and listen and want to learn more and want to grow more, okay? So like there's people watching these like 10 times every time for the first 10 minutes. Why? Because there's a lot packed into Matthew 10, 37 through 39 that apparently Christians never understood. We need some disciples and some sons and daughters to rise up and start showing people how to do this, because this is complex. Infinitely simple, we're supposed to follow Jesus. Infinitely complex, because now go follow him. Look how hard this is. This is at the beginning, he's saying. Right? You're going to see that it's at the beginning in this next one. Luke 14, 25 through 35. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. You see the difference between Christians and disciples right there? You see why it is that like only 3 times mentioned Christian, 267 times disciple, that this world decided to create Christians instead? Because this is what he's saying. You've got to like literally this before you can be my disciple. And then he tries to explain it. Okay, he's going to do it in a parable though, which means if you don't have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, you can't even catch it. So I'm going to try to explain it to where you can. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Maybe Paul meant someone. He said, I've finished the race. I go to receive a prize. I've run to the finish. I counted the cost at the beginning and I went to the finish. And this is a guy who didn't marry, right? And he said, if you could do it like me, do it. Why? Because the second you get married and there's going to be a distraction, and then you're going to have kids and there's going to be a distraction. And it sounds like to me, Jesus said, like, don't let there be distractions when it comes to following me. See, there's hyperlinks, there's things to see, like there's ideas, there's a moral to the story, the whole thing. But this is so important to understand. As a disciple, you were supposed to count the cost before, but Christians have to count this cost along the way. So like you've supposedly been following Jesus your whole life. I meet people 30 years, been disrespecting God with their lives in the church and seeing it now, right? So now they've got to count the cost and decide if they can do it. And these people still can't do it. They can look back and see that they've disrespected God with their entire lives up to this point and are still making those same mistakes right now. Right? And so that's the idea, is if anything's going to come before God, then things are going to come before God, and life's going to be crazy. Life's not going to make sense because it's not the life that's actually life. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he's not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. He's always going to the heart of things. Give up everything that you have if you want to be my disciples. all that's doing and all that's doing, sorry, all that's doing and all that's doing and all that's doing is God can see your heart now. When you read this, when you hear me saying this, like if there's a fear in you, oh my gosh, do you mean everything? And if you can say that, then you don't understand the reality is what eternity is, that we're going to be with him forever. You care more about this life than that, which means you can't believe it actually exists, or you at least haven't dreamt and thought about it enough to say it does exist and wow. And then this is easier then. Because you realize, like, if this is the hardest life I've ever lived, and if I'm imprisoned like Paul was and tortured like Paul was and anything else, at the end of my life, I'll get to say, I finished the race. I go to receive a prize from Jesus. But if you don't know Jesus and love Jesus, that doesn't mean anything to you. You're thinking what you got to give up to follow him. By the way, everything was made for and through and by him. So all you're getting distracted by are the things that were made for and through and by him. It should have been about him, but it was about this. And that's why he's making it so extreme so that those of us that do follow him through it are like, wow, this is the life that's actually life. The yoke is easy, the burden is light, because it isn't even about this worldly life. And I can tell you, a kingdom heart can carry a heavy load and it still be light. Okay, but look at what this says next. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how could it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor the manure pile. It is thrown out. Listen, I bet people think I'm mean a lot when I teach, when I call people out in class, when I'm hardest on my top people. I know people think that I'm mean, but I can assure you that I can't be more mean than this. Okay, this is wild. Okay, like this salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how could it be made salty again? Okay, that's an identity. If your identity is salt and you lose your saltiness, you're worthless, you're useless. Okay, says him. It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. If you know what manure is, you know what's being said here. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. Now, what's fascinating in scripture is anytime this has to be said, the truth of the matter is that only the narrowest of the narrow paths understand this. Only the narrowest of the narrow paths are teaching this. Because this is going to shrink churches, not grow them. Okay? This is what Jesus is doing is not going to explode mega churches. You're not going to have 15,000 people congregations. No, you're going to have a select few. I don't know, like Jesus had 12/11 because one did that thing. Okay. Literally every time he spoke, he had less. Why? Because narrow is the path and few find it. If you go to a church and you say it's a real church, right? Then that's you. You're in the mass. You're in the wide is the road that leads to destruction, people, for sure. Because this will clear the place. That you're telling people what Jesus said will clear the place. Imagine that. They won't stay. They won't count the cost. They don't want to. They want to go to a place that says, as long as you tithe, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to be prosperous in this life. And people like me look at that and go, that's not my goal, man. So I'm not going to give you money so that I can make money. I'm out of here. People go there. Y'all pretend to worship God there? Because that's exactly what you do. You pretend to worship God there. You've got bootleg American Idol singers that couldn't make it on the real stage coming over to make money off dumb Christians. And there's a lot of them because they're dumb Christians. A disciple had to count the cost before and would walk into that embarrassment y'all call a worship service and run out of there because Jesus would be cracking a whip, running everybody out of there. And the dead ones would stay. But I guess that's mean to say. Instead of, you're in danger if you go to one of these churches of going to hell because we can tell you love this life. And Jesus said, if you love this life, you'll lose it. But if you lose it for him, you'll gain it for eternity. So if you think we're mean, it's okay. We're not going to tell you what your pastor's saying, who's lining his pockets with your money so you can have a country club membership and golf every week. Not one of these. Not ever one of these in those churches. Never, ever one time is there going to be one of these in those churches. And you want a shepherd in these days. Somebody that'll get down in the gate and keep the wolves out. That don't have to dress up in sheep's clothing for this generation of people. They just come in as wolves and they're like, we should give them a bunch of money. What? That's the frustration though. It's what Jesus said I know would clear buildings out. He literally cracked a whip and ran them out and said, you made my father's house a marketplace. But his words would run people out too. Look at this and what he's saying. It will not build big churches. So if you're trying to build a big church, that's the problem. It won't happen if you're speaking the truth and hard truths. It'll shrink the group at all times. They'll go to real churches. Who cares? Run, go, right? Because truthfully, he didn't have time for that either. He was saying what it was and saying, let's go back and see. Anyone who loves their father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. That's going to clear a place out, not fill it up, because that isn't saying if you tithe money to the church, you'll make a lot of money, you'll get to live this life awesome and the next one. That is not what he's saying. He's saying you better stake your whole life on the next one, or you're not coming to the next one where you want to go. You're going to the other place where you don't want to go. That's what he's saying. But if you can get that together, all right, if you can understand that, feel like you're ready to count the cost, feel like you're ready to follow Jesus. Too bad it's halfway up the hill or something. No, don't worry. You've been at base camp making s'mores and singing Kumbaya. You hadn't taken any steps up the mountain. You just pretended to yourself you did. But now, maybe you could. And let's read on if this is somebody. If you're somebody now who decides, no, I do love God more than anyone or anything. Now what? There is many now whats, but let's look. Matthew 9:35-38. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Hello, a sheep without a shepherd. They're sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, not Christians, his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's why I don't say I'm a pastor. I don't say that crazy thing in our culture, because that means 9 times out of 10, I'm in the same business suit as a politician trying to take all your money, but I'm not giving you nutrition. I'm a shepherd to the flock of Jesus Christ, an assigned one, an assigned leader. A great man does not seek to lead. He is called to it and he answers. And what he knows is I'm going to pour an enormous amount of energy into a lot of people and get almost zero in return when it comes to people. But the reward is from God. I look at this as a reward to be a worker of his in the harvest fields that he says are plentiful, because I know him and love him and desire to serve him and desire to please him. And when he looks at my heart, he knows that's true. But he looks at me and always says, like these people aren't going to be giving you and it isn't about money, not giving me money, even just like the love and the thanks for giving them real teaching and real nutrition, because I am not Jesus, right? I'm unfit to untie his sandals. I am going to point straight the way to the king. I'm a voice pointing to the king, and we all should be as leaders right now. All of us should be the voice pointing straight the way to the king, not just John the Baptist, who did it ultimately for Jesus to come, but now after the pouring out of the Holy Spirit, us as leaders and shepherds and teachers and elders and all those things you call ought to be pointing straight the way to the king, because the king is going to return. Yes, we know that. If there's nothing else as a follower of Jesus, he's going to be coming back. And if we're not pointing straight the way to the king, we're not doing our job as workers. We're doing something else. We're doing our job as employees in America. No, we're to point straight the way to the king. And so to be in the harvest fields is an honor and a privilege. And a lot and most of that is going to come from God himself to you if you're truly at this place, that your knowledge of him and your love for him and your understanding of him and the wisdom that he just keeps on expanding your cup and pouring into it. Your frustration with the flock will be your frustration with the flock, but your love that comes from God and the well done, good and faithful servant from time to time get you to the next place. Because he said, love him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if you love him with some of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, you'll wonder how much you could love him. Okay. If you hear nothing else, hear that. Okay. There is a threshold. There is a should. He said you have to love him more than mother, father, husband, wife, kids, the dog, everything. But when you do, and you come through that threshold of should love him at a certain amount, you open up your spring of living water and you wonder to yourself, how much could I love him? So when I ask people in the culture, what's a deep question about life you don't know the answer to, so that I can inject Jesus into the hearts of many? If they ever ask me what's a deep question I have, it's how high on this mountain can I go before I go home? And what that really means is how much more can I know him and love him and serve him on my way home? Because this certainly isn't my home. I have counted the cost. I have seen that it's worth it. I am living the life that's actually life. What's mortal is being swallowed up by life more and more and more as I look forward to seeing and meeting the King of all kings. Now, it's getting better now, right? You're somebody that's counted the cost. You're somebody that's decided to run the race. You're somebody that is on the way. You're a worker in the harvest fields. Let's look at this. Matthew 6:19 through 21. Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So you see the way this flow has gone. Count the cost. Most people won't. He said, narrow's the path and few find it. So now we're the narrow path people. We're the leaders on the narrow path. All right. Now we're looking at this in a whole different way. If somebody's not the narrow path person, they still haven't counted the cost and they're showing up in churches pretending once a week. This is just something that they're reading. This is something they're studying with a bunch of boring people. They're regurgitating information for tests or whatever. No. If you now are a mature child of God who's grown into really desiring to please him, know him, love him, desire to please him, you're in his harvest fields, you are a worker in there, then this means something different to you. Think about it. It has to. Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So my treasure's in heaven, which I know. My heart is there too. I'm just passing through. What I really care about is knowing God, loving God, and pleasing God. And that accidentally on purpose lays up treasure for me in heaven. Only our Father could create it that way. Send his Son to show us the path, the way, the truth, the light. No one comes to the Father except through him. The way, the truth, the life, the actual life that no one comes to the Father except through me. And then when you've done that and when you've counted the cost and when you're in the harvest fields, you know you're storing up treasure in heaven. And that's not even why you're doing the work. It's because it's an honor and you desire to please your Father. And he's like, yes, you do. And now you're in abundance. He says it all the time, right? He who has, I will give to an abundance. He who doesn't have, even that'll be taken from them and then given to the one with an abundance. But we don't walk around in arrogance with that. We walk around holding ourselves to a higher level and expecting that of the flock that we're assigned, right? It just gets me excited because I am one of these, but I want it for you too. But how many of you really want it, desire it, or listening to this and thinking this is me? Or do you desire for it to be you even? Or do you reject this altogether? Or did I ruffle your little feathers and you want to try to give me some history data lesson, some cemetery/seminary idea? No, this is the life that's actually life. You're not going to do a book study to convince me out of this because it's not a book. But you can come to this party if you've been listening and paying attention because it just gets better. Let's look at this. Now, this is a way that I trick pastors in the day too, because you ask them this question and they always fail because false humility is taught in the church. So greatest or least in the kingdom, they're going to say least. It's what they do, least, and then they try to explain it. It's not explainable. Here's Jesus saying what the qualifications are. Matthew 5:19 through 20. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Pretty scary when your pastor says least with false humility, and then this is what it says. They're going to less the commands. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So look at what we've done. We've counted the cost. We're growing. We're transforming, changing. We're in the harvest fields where the workers are few. The harvest is plentiful. The workers are few. We really desire to know God, love God, and serve God. So we're pleasing God with our lives. We're laying up treasure in heaven. And now we're seeing this. Greatest and least in the kingdom, which is for eternity. We're in America. People are fighting and scraping and clawing in this little old nothing country to be the greatest. You know what I'm saying? But not in the kingdom of heaven for eternity. You'd have to false humility trap your way out of that amazing offer. Or you would have to pretend it doesn't exist. Or you would have to not understand what it means to not over here scrape, claw, and go and get it. But let me tell you, the competition's few over here. honestly. I come from over here where everybody's scraping and clawing to get to the top, over to here where nobody is. Nobody is. But that's what he said. The harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. So I'm not surprised, but I'm trying to create more of them. Why? For you. For you. I'm already one who knows God, loves God, desires to serve God, who is fighting to be one of the greatest in the kingdom, but not with, you can't be arrogant and get here. It's confidence only, and faith is confidence, by the way. And as you grow in faith, the author and perfecter of faith starts to perfect your faith. You start to grow in the work you can do for him, in the treasure you're laying up in heaven, and now there's the greatest or least in the kingdom for eternity. If that doesn't get you excited, you don't believe in eternity. Or you at least haven't been using your imagination. And even then, what no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. I get excited about that because I'm one who loves him. Maybe you want to go get some. I hope so. That's all I want to do. I want to create more. I want to multiply the kingdom. I want one person to hear this and go do it. And luckily I do. Aaron, you're somewhere watching this, calling it a master class. And people that have been in my class for a long time still trying to figure out it's a master class. Why is it important to understand it's a master class? It's Jesus who's leading us here. That's what I want to focus on, is what Jesus said, because he is the one that chased off all the Christians of the day and kept the disciples with him. And then chased off the Christians of the day, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and the Zealots, running for the hills, right? And the disciples staying. And he lost even more disciples than he gained every time because it was hard teachings. But it was leading to the life that's actually life, so it had to be hard. And he spoke in parables to reveal to those who had the ears and to conceal from those who didn't even try to understand, right? And then boom, greatest or least in the kingdom. But when they don't want to answer, and sometimes they don't, there's a third option. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Which means we'll let you figure that out if it's not in the kingdom where it is, right? But for those of us who followed along, for those of us that are excited, for those of us that are like, that's me, I want it to be more me, there's the 2 Corinthians 5:10 I like to end with all the time, because now we've decided that we have counted the cost. We love him more than anyone or anything. Okay, we're moving up this mountain at a speed that nobody had to teach us to, because we're following Christ up there now, right? And we're looking at it as the treasure in heaven, again, comes from a heart that wants to serve God. So that's not even what we're thinking about. We just know we're doing it as we're pleasing him, which is abundance in itself. We're striving to be greatest in the kingdom, which is extremely difficult because he said to practice and teach everything he commanded. And you're going to take some time to go figure out everything he commanded you, right? But it's written on our heart as well. So the idea is he's looking at our heart as a desire to serve, as a desire for striving for perfection, right? I'll do a whole class on this, but something you got to know is another cop-out in Christianity is I'm not perfect. Okay, sure, that's true, but are you striving for perfection? Because you're not perfect is true. Not striving for perfection is disobedience, because Jesus said, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. But as you're going through this, now when you come to this verse, and if you live your whole life for this day, then man, your whole life would be different. You'd be able to count the cost. You'd be able to think better about loving God more than everything and everyone if you just even knew him a little because of this. And I don't have to look because I know what it is, and you should too. For we all must appear before the judgment seat of Christ to receive what is due for what we did in the body, whether good or bad. The Bema seat, where an athlete goes to receive a reward, that I've made it into heaven, which is beyond my imagination. I have hugged Jesus, which is beyond my imagination. And now I'm going to sit down with Jesus Christ and tell him what I did with his life. Yes, my life, what I did in the body, whether good or bad, but without his life, I wouldn't have had one. I wouldn't have had one. I would have been like everybody else who climbs Success Mountain with sand in their mouth the whole way, thinking by the time you get to the top, it'll change to something else, and it doesn't. It's sand the whole way. You get to the top, you look over, it's a desolate wasteland. No, I'm going to be sitting with the Jesus who died, who suffered, who died, who laid down his life for me, who by his blood shed on the cross, I'm reconciled to a perfect holy God, resurrected from the dead, beat death, so do I, who he's given life to, pouring out of the Holy Spirit as he kept saying it's better that I go so he will come, helps me to and walks me into all truth. The very Spirit that searches the deep things of God lives in here and walks and expands a heart and mind that's willing into more and more understanding of who God is. so that I'm excited to sit with him someday. Excited to what you call die and get an upgrade out of this, to sit with Jesus and give him an account for what I did in the body, whether good or bad, with his life. Now, there's plenty of bad, sure, but that was before. The old is gone, the new is here. Since the understanding increased and that level got to of knowing him and loving him enough, where it was more than anything or anyone, it became this abundance, is that since then, there's a lot of good to talk to Jesus about, a lot of thankfulness for what he did, waking me up from that life that's not life and shaking me like crazy into the life that's actually life. Oh, and someday you will too. If you don't look forward to that day, if you don't look forward to the day you sit with Jesus and give an account for your life, you're either fearful of if you're living that life, which perfect love drives out fear. Okay, over time, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Perfect love drives out fear, though. A reverence and awe and love for him will grow if you actually know him and love him, and then you're looking forward to this day. Paul was. He said, I've finished race, I've run the race, I go to receive a prize that was promised to me by Jesus and all who long for his appearing. And I'm one who longs for his appearing. I long for sitting with him and talking about this with extreme tears running down my face for all the time that I lived my life as some prodigal son. I knew God from a young age and lived a life that wasn't pleasing to him. But that's a catapult to live this one, not a guilt and shame trap to keep me from climbing the mountain, but a catapult up the mountain, just like it was for Paul, who was murdering Christians before he was the follower of Jesus, who wrote half the New Testament. Okay? Hope you enjoyed it. That's the difference between a Christian and a disciple. That's my frustration with people who say they're Christians, and I have to say what kind, what denomination, what garbage minutia are you caught up in that isn't following the red letters and what Jesus said for you to become. It's so frustrating in a culture like this. But it's also amazing in a culture like this when somebody does come to the life that's actually life and then run in it. And that's happening a lot too. So listen, do you care? Do you, have you even counted the cost? Do you know God and love God enough to make it all about him? Or are you just pretending as a Christian in some congregation sitting the bench? Because that sounds and feels like a depart from me, I never knew you. And I don't want that for anyone. And so I have to speak the way that I do. And I hope that you heard it. But for some of you, you're maturing and growing. You're hitting thresholds. You can start looking forward to some of these other things, right? Some of this workers in the harvest field that's plentiful, but the workers are few. So you get to go out there and do a lot for God. Or do you really desire to? And these are all the questions you have to ask yourself and decide, did this ruffle your feathers and you're offended because you're a Christian? Or did this rally the troops because you're a disciple of Jesus Christ, striving to be a perfect copy of the master because he told you to? He said to practice and teach everything he's commanded, that if you love him, you'll follow his commands. And then you're going to sit with him someday and give an account for what you did in this life. Doesn't that bring purpose to it? Everybody looking for purpose, settling for purposelessness and things outside of Jesus Christ, because that's what it is. If everything was made for and through and by him, and you found something outside of him, no purpose could be in that. I love you. I'm excited for you, or I'm frustrated with you, or you're not one of us. But the truth of the matter is, if you have the ears to hear, you should be excited right now. Let's go.